degree, you do have some Muslim groups, like in Egypt, you had the Jama'ah al-Islamiyah and the Jama'at al-Jihad, etc., who were involved in some major terrorist acts. People, innocent civilians, people on buses, like in Luxor, tourists, etc., were massacred, by these groups, in their attempt to try to topple the government. This, in fact, much of the activities that they've been involved in, we could really say these are terroristic activities. They lend support to this misnomer placed on the Muslim world. Unfortunately, some of the blame, we have to say, falls on ourselves, because there are people involved in such acts, and they carry Muslim names. Some of them even espouse Islam and do it in the name of Islam. Similarly, you find in southern Philippines today, the so-called Abu Sayyaf group and their activities. They're very terroristic, kidnapping, chopping off people's heads and things like this for ransom, just gathering money for themselves. The people involved in this are children. When you look at their names, their ages, you know that they're children. And in fact, they're misguided here. This is not, all the major groups, the MILF, etc., have all denounced them. They don't support their tactics at all. These are illegitimate tactics. This is not the Islamic way. So we have to admit that to some degree, Muslims have contributed to this false impression that is promoted worldwide with regards to Islam. Even places like Algeria, where there's some atrocities going on, this has been attributed to the Islamic movement. But actually, when you go and you research into this situation, you'll find that it's not really them. There are other elements there that are involved in it. Some people identify that these elements are linked back with the government, and their activities are used to discredit the Islamic movement, which they have succeeded to a large degree. However, in general, the Islamic movement is still supported by masses of the people. And as we said, in the end, the indiscriminate use of violence to promote any kind of political ends, Islam does not support at all. We find in the 32nd chapter, verse 5, Allah saying, anyone who has killed another except in retaliation, it is as if he has killed the whole of humankind. So this Islam is a huge rebuke of this kind of violence there. We can also say that there are strict rules with regards to conflicts. Islam has strict rules. What can a Muslim soldier kill? He cannot just kill any kind of living being that he finds in an area. He's only allowed to direct his harm to the people who are involved in fighting. People have taken up arms. They're wearing military equipment. They're involved in killing Muslims. To fight against them, to protect the lives of Muslims, is perfectly legitimate. Now, there's a question which arises along with this, that of suicide bombers. People who strap huge amounts of TNT or whatever, explosives around their bodies. They go amongst the midst of the enemy, and then they set these things off, killing huge numbers. Now, the Tamil Tigers in Sri Lanka, they have been using this method for a number of years. They've stricken grave fear in the minds and the hearts of the people. Is this method acceptable? Well, for the Tamil Tigers, you'll find that they will go and blow up the president. They'll blow up all kinds of people around them and everything like this. This is indiscriminate use of violence. In the case of the struggles in, for example, Palestine, and currently now in Chechnya, some of these tactics have been used. The scholars have pointed out that though suicide in general in Islam is forbidden, to kill oneself, to take something knowing that you're going to die, from this thing, this is in fact forbidden in Islam. This is one of the bases of forbidding smoking of cigarettes, because it can cause cancer, causing death. So it's prohibited on that basis. Now, the concept of a suicide bomber is different. A person who kills himself in normal life, he's killing himself because he can't stand to live anymore. He feels God is unfair to him or whatever. Life has lost its meaning. He just wants to die, get out of this. Right? That's his intention. When you look at the mind of the suicide bomber, it's different. intention altogether. His situation is that he's not able to get at the troops of the enemy. They're either too heavily armed, they don't have the type of equipment that can deal with it. So the only other option they have is to try to get some people amongst them and then explode the charges that they have to try to destroy the equipment and to save the lives of their comrades. So this is not really considered to be suicide in the true sense. This is a military action, and human lives are sacrificed in that military action. This is really the bottom line for it. And that's how we should look at it. Islam is opposed to terrorism in all forms. What is true terrorism? But it will not shrink from using violence to gain some of its ends, to establish itself in certain areas, to gain control over certain things. It could use a certain amount of violence. But to force somebody to become a Muslim, this is something inconceivable, unacceptable Islamically. Well, with that, dear viewers, we'd like to thank you for being with us in this segment, which we call Islam and terrorism, the issues of killing innocents. This is what we dealt with in specific, because the general definitions of used by certain departments and governments, and etc., which is the threat or the use of violence to advance political causes by individuals, that's not sufficient to define terrorism, because it includes the American Revolution and the French Revolution. So when we talk about tourism, when we talk about terrorism, we're talking about indiscriminate use of violence. People are not selectively killed because they represent the military opposition, but they are killed to create fear and doubts in the hearts of the people. So with that, dear viewers, I'd like to thank you for being with us and hope that you'll continue to follow our program, the remaining episodes. And we thank you again for your support, whatever letters you've written in with your suggestions. We've tried to include basically everything that was available. So I now bid you farewell. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.